is up? Outlap F1 Nation. This will be episode 6. No, this will be season 6. Wow, we're off to a great start. Season 6, episode 35 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's the 2024, don't call it BAKU, it's the Azerbaijan Grand Prix review show. You've got Andy, and I'm along with my wonderful co-host, as always, Cody. It's good to see you, sir. Are we fully recovered from being up at the crack of dawn to watch this thing?
Yeah, I'm a little amazed with myself that I got up because I, of course, stayed up way too late Saturday night playing video games. So, went to bed at 2, got back up at 6, but I did it, and it was worth it because it was a rockin' race. I'm probably sporting the wrong hat for this race because of how things went, but I just had to show off my nice new Max Verstappen hat. I love it. Big thanks to my fiance's parents for getting this for me as a gift.
Do you want to show off the gift that you got in error too? I think that's even cooler.
Yeah. If you want to see that.
All right, YouTube people, you're gonna get a cracking exclusive right here, only on the visual side.
If you guys have been watching this for a while, you'll know I am a big Max Verstappen fan. And my fiance's parents asked me what I would like for my birthday. And I told them, I would really love a new F1 hat. And so they ordered it, and it arrived, and I opened it, and this was the one that was staring back at me. And I was still very, very, very happy, but I couldn't bring myself in the moment to say anything. But I was sitting there going it's not quite the right one. It's the wrong driver. But no, they actually ordered the right one. F1 must have ordered, just grabbed the wrong one off the shelf or something. And they were really nice. They let me keep this one too. They didn't ask us to return it. So now I've got both drivers. And like Andy was saying before the show here, this one might be a collector's item at some point.
Yep.
So
keep that one pristine. That one might have some value to it at some point. But and I've heard some stories. You're not the only one that I know has had that happen to them, where some people have ordered the right thing and you get the wrong item. One thing that I know, somebody who tried to buy me a diecast car once actually bought the wrong Mercedes driver. It was supposed to be a Lewis Hamilton. I got a Nico Rosberg. I kept the Nico Rosberg. It's still on the same place along with my Lando Danny Rick 1-2 from Monza from a couple years ago. And that there's going to be a new one. There's going to be one coming. It's already ordered. The problem is they take 8 months to manufacture and ship. So I will eventually have the MCL current year car joining that, because they've been on the top step of the podium. So, hey, I may have to get another one. I'm going to have to get a Piastri after this one. Wow. And that's why you're all here. Well, you're not here to listen about our respective collections, but you're here to talk about Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And for being up at the dawn's early light, it turned out to be a banger. And we're going to hop into that in just a little bit. But if you found our show, welcome along. As David Croft, who was not there, would say, but he'll be saying it in Singapore. I think he's supposed to be back this week. But the dude who replaced him on the world feed, top-notch job. That dude, I thought, did a really nice job. But anyway, you can find our show on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and, of course, YouTube. At Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you're seeing and you like what you're hearing, you can do as the kids do and smash that subscribe button, or you can leave us a like. Or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, specifically Apple Podcast or Spotify, a 5-star review goes a long way in terms of getting our content to you that much quicker. So we would be most appreciative if you'd like to do that. You can email the show, chatnow@outlapf1.com. Thank you so much to the people who do continue to support the show monetarily, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member of that hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, you can see our anchor page in our show notes that we put out all the time. $5 would be most appreciative from anybody, simply because what does it do? Helps us reinvest in the show, helps us buy some new equipment for the show, helps us upgrade the equipment we already have. You got to be on the cutting edge in this game, apparently, to try to keep up. So we try our best to try to do that. But we would be appreciative if you'd like to help us out with that. Finally, you can use our code OUTLAP, that's OUTLAP, and get 20% off and free shipping from the good folks at Manscaped. I tried the code a couple times. I think it still actually does work, even though it's been out there for a while. So go ahead and use it. It's there. We're happy, as always, to bring that to you. So we shall start with our headlines of the day. Cody, take it away, sir. What you got?
My headline of the day, and I feel like I've probably actually used this one before this season, is what a race. We had another banger, and it really does feel like it's, been a couple of years since we've been this spoiled with all of the good races. This one was one that swung back and forth. First you thought Charles Leclerc was going to run away with it, and then he got kind of snuck back up on, as we're going to get into, by Piastri, who proceeded to hold off Leclerc for, it seemed like forever, lap after lap after lap, and ended up coming home with a very well-deserved win. Definitely left you with a lot better feeling than his first win. I feel like he really, not that he didn't go out and earn the first one, but there was no arguing who deserved it this time out.
Yeah, if you wanted your oh hell yeah moment, this race gave it to you. So my headline of the day is just Piastri brilliance. What else can you say, man? Oscar not only took the brunt of the pressure from a hard charging and possibly even a little bit quicker Charles Leclerc in certain parts of that track, who gave it to him lap after lap after lap for about 25 solid laps. He was in DRS. One, and full credit to Leclerc, one, to make those tires work as long as he did, and two, for giving it absolutely everything that he had. But anyway, full props to Oscar Piastri for taking the lead on a move that we're going to talk about. It is one of the best moves. To watch it on timing and then to see it happen in reality, I was completely befuddled as to what it was until I saw it, and as soon as I saw it, I went, hot damn, that was a move right there. So he takes the lead, and then he holds on. That's his best win. Throughout all the junior categories that he's had. I don't know how he's going to top it. If he's going to top it, it's going to have to be something really, really good, because this one's going to be right up there. So just Piastri brilliance on display from qualifying on. He was definitely not, one, the better of the two McLaren drivers, let's be honest about it, and two, he just came right up onto his own over the course of this race. So this is the potential realized. Oscar Piastri, hot damn, what a race. Mm-hmm. All right, so we will rewind and we will go back to Saturday, which had some interesting things definitely for sure happened in the qualifying. Definitely got to talk about all of that. All right, let's see if this actually works on the first go. All right, so actually getting the dreaded DQ for some post-race malfeasance. That was post-session malfeasance. We'll talk about that. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Only slightly better was P19, the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon. A rough Friday and a rougher Saturday for the Alpine boys. Let's put it that way. P18 was Zhao Guan Yu. P17 was Valtteri Bottas. P16 after the Gasly DQ. Did not expect to see him down here. Certainly in my predictions, that screwed all that up. That was Lando Norris in the first McLaren. P15 was Daniel Ricciardo. P14, Lance Stroll. P13, Nico Hülkenberg. P12 was Yuki Tsunoda. P11, super sub, man. Hell of an effort here. Oliver Behrman in the Haas. Way to go, man. P10, Alex Albon in the Williams. P9, better super sub. I'll see your Oliver Behrman and raise you Franco Colapinto. P9 for Williams in only his second race in Formula One. Hot dang. P8, Fernando Alonso. P7, Lewis Hamilton. Bit of a surprise there. P6 was Max Verstappen. P5 was George Russell. Excuse me. P5, George Russell. P4, Sergio Perez. Hello, it's nice to see you again. There you go. P3 was Carlos Sainz. P2 was Oscar Piastri in that other McLaren. And P1, you got to say it, this guy just loves this track. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari knows how to do Baku, man. Whole time 141.365. All right, Cody, big stuff from the qualifying? I got a funny feeling where you're going to start.
First one, I'm actually going to start with some good news. Like you're saying,
all right, you're going to go positive first. Yes, let's talk about Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc, I believe they were saying it's his fourth pole in a row at Azerbaijan. So yes, he definitely knows how to go around this track in one lap. Fantastic drive by him, coming off of all the good feeling of him winning the Italian Grand Prix. So it's very exciting to see. But then, yes, I do have to swing back to, I don't know if it's necessarily bad news, because I'd say overall, Red Bull maybe looked a little better this time out than they did in Italy. But yeah, for the first time this season, Max Verstappen gets out-qualified by Sergio Perez, and I'm sure Max is probably not very happy about that, because he does not seem to like to be outperformed by his teammate, as rare as it happens. But yeah, Perez looking really locked in here. It's just like Leclerc. Something about Baku. Perez always seems to be pretty locked in here. Even beyond just the fact that he seems really good at street courses, he is really, really good here. And Baku qualifies well, races well. Yeah, hasn't been anywhere in a lot of races now, but he did arrive here and meant business. So really good to see that from Checo. Max, clearly didn't have as good a hold on the car here. I don't know if it's a driving style thing. I don't know if it's a setup thing. Maybe the cars were just not set up quite right. Max did have a lot of complaints during the race, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. But yeah, a bit of a rare occasion here.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Red Bull stuff goes, one, like I said in the intro, Checo Perez, nice to see you here up at the front, sir. It's been a minute. Just I think even I saw a quote from Christian Horner that said, if we could have 24 races around Baku, Sergio Perez would easily be your next world champion. There is just something about the topography of the track, whether it's the grip level, street course, the driving style, it just matches up. And it's kind of uncanny. Both Leclerc and Checo here were just very, very strong. As far as Max goes, he's attributing it to a setup change that they made post FP3 and going into qualifying. The car, Red Bull, I thought throughout the practice sessions on Friday, looked a lot better. There was almost to the point where I'm like, they might actually be getting, on top of this thing. We may have to deal with them yet again, but that didn't turn out to be quite the case. You look at Italy, you look here. Here's the difference if you're a Red Bull fan. You look at Italy, it felt like they were nowhere and they couldn't explain it and they couldn't understand it. Here, they made a specific change to try to eke some extra performance out. They seem to understand what it did, and they understand where they went wrong a little bit better. So I do think it's going to better things potentially to come for Red Bull. They have, I think, another floor update coming for Austin at Circuit of the Americas. It's not going to be in Singapore, and Singapore's always been a rough race for them anyway. But I do think they're going to try to get that upgrade on the car and test it in Austin, which is going to be interesting because that's a sprint weekend. So, we've seen McLaren able to pull it off. Red Bull's going to have to try to do the same act there. So that will make the USGP all the much more interesting to see how that plays out. So now we have to talk about the guy at the back of the grid that probably didn't expect to be there. Totally ruined my prediction. I had Lando Norris in contention for the pole, and that went away in Q1. So let's discuss what happened. You can't talk about what happened to Lando without talking about what happened to the Alpines. Let's just say the practices were very wonky. Lots of red flags, lots of interruptions, and I would say, yes, Charles Leclerc had a crash, and yes, Franco Colapinto had a crash, but the vast majority of what I saw, yellow flags and virtual safety cars and red flags for and all this other stuff, were from the Alpine guys. Pierre Gasly's engine was not behaving at all on Friday, and they had to swap it out. Esteban Ocon couldn't apparently keep the car out of the wall and kept popping tires, and that's effectively what happened to Lando at the end of Q1. We're ticking down to the end. They're all out. on last runs. The McLarens were actually both out on used sets of tires because they're trying to save a set to potentially have 2 for Q3. But the track was evolving very, very quickly. This is the first time we've ever raced in Baku in the fall. And 2, it's a street course. So, I mean, there's all sorts of whatever, and it's used. That street is used a lot. It's right in there downtown. So this is not like a pristine, hidden away road that doesn't ever get any traffic on it. No, this thing gets used. So there was a lot of low grip, especially early on Friday, and a lot of track evolution. And it's in that Q1 session that you can kind of see that. And it was ramping up, and everybody, even on used tires, was setting lots of greens and lots of personal best sectors. And Lando was on a pretty decent lap. It probably would have made it out of Q1. However, Esteban Ocon did strike the wall, I think, going into turn 16. He has a puncture. He pulls way off. And the controversy, well, I don't know if it's controversy. It's just what happened. FIA put out a double yellow flag zone, which double yellow flags are slow down and be prepared to stop. And in the middle of a qualifying lap, when you're in a double yellow flag zone, that will kill your lap time. And that's basically what happened to Lando. The only other thing that was that double yellow was only about out for maybe 3-4 seconds tops. And it was just when Lando happened to be crossing it. So he was unable to set his faster track evolved second lap time and gets caught out in P17 on the road. He gets promoted to P16 after the Pierre Gasly DQ. And then he gets promoted to P15 after Lewis Hamilton, who qualified 7th, had to make a setup change, and they just added an extra engine into his pool. So now he starts from the pit lane. Cody, what's your thought on, was it just bad luck for Lando, or is there anything they could have done different?
Mostly the bad luck with the way the yellow flags went. I thought he was still going to finish the lap, and I think commentators did too. Everyone seemed very surprised when he went and pulled into the pit lane there at the end. It did look like he was maybe having a little bit of a sloppy lap anyway. There was a spot where he went pretty hard way over the curb. I don't think that was, damning enough to prevent him from getting out, outside the bottom 5. But, that combined with the track conditions, you got to follow what the marshals say. They said you got to slow down. So, yeah, he just got kind of caught out by that. It made for, what was going to be a really interesting dynamic between him and Max, though, because now he's starting at the back. Max is having not a great, weekend himself, but now he's got at least a lot of, track position on Lando to start the race. So you think maybe, Lando's just missing out on another opportunity to eat into that, points lead. But yeah, mostly bad luck, I think, on Lando there.
Yeah, I mean, the frustrating part is I just wonder, and I'm not suggesting that he should have done this, but it was one of those in the moment because the broadcast kept intonating that it was a white flag on the panel, which meant that he could have been staying at speed. It was very, from looking at it on my timing pylon that I have versus the one that was on the TV, there was conflicting information. I actually couldn't tell what happened right away because the scoring pylon that I had did not light up yellow flags. It usually lights up yellow flags. That one is ahead of the broadcast, whatever broadcast you're watching. It's as close to live as you can possibly get is the official F1.com scoring pylon. You just have to register, you sign up, and then you get it. I had it on my iPad. It was fully synced. It was live. I never saw that. So I was like, why then in the last sector did he go from scoring, green mini sectors to now all yellow, 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 yellow? And it definitely looked, and then you watch the broadcast and it comes up that, he's not making it.
Where did Ocon have the flat at? Like, where did he pull off on the track?
It was right at the start of the main straight.
Okay, it's right at the start of the main straight.
Right.
I was going to say, like, if he was further down on the main straight there where you're going to be going really fast, I could see more of the double yellow thing. I guess if it's at the start of the straight, you're not.
It was just as he was going to try to put the gas on.
I got you.
He comes around the curve. He's on the curb. He comes off the curb. He starts to throw the throttle down. And then all of a sudden he has to back out because you do see the panel. And the panel looked like it was white. Apparently, according to Lando, his steering wheel lit up that it was double yellow flags. His engineer came on the radio and said double yellow flags where you are. What you couldn't tell was, I never saw it on my scoring, but I did see it on the one on television. So there definitely was something flashed.
I guess he could have tried to finish the lap and try to see if he squeezes into the top 10 that way, but then, and just take the penalty.
Take the 3 place.
Yeah.
Well, and you never know what the FIA is going to do there. They could just say that's super dangerous. Double yellow flags are there for a reason. It's not a 3-place grid penalty. It now becomes a 5 or a 10 place or whatever they're going to do. Mm-hmm. So, it just, for safety reasons and how we want to see people go about things. And if that happens to you, you want somebody else to slow down. That is completely, he did the right thing. I didn't think there was any error there. You could have maybe given it at McLaren had they not sent the driver out at all. That would have been, a foolish thing given the amount of track evolution. They didn't do that. It was just kind of where it was in the queue. It was just the unfortunate thing of being around an Alpine, which apparently up until that point was really bad luck for everybody around them because they kept disrupting all of the sessions. But so it kind of just was what it was thing. Let's put it that way.
That's a little bit for qualifying, I think, as we saw very strong qualifying performances from Franco Colapinto and Oliver Behrman, both out qualifying their teammates who are much more seasoned Formula One drivers and have much more experience in those respective cars. Nico Hulkenberg in particular has been a very strong qualifier in the Haas since he's gotten that seat. So to see him get out qualified in Oliver Behrman's second Formula One race and first race in the Haas was really something to see, as well as Franco Colapinto having a really good day out. So yeah, really really strong showings from the rookie drivers.
I totally agree. Haas, you've got something in Oliver Behrman and Williams. Apparently that Williams Academy might just have something in it because Franco's come in and has done the job. And, for all the hand-wringing and all we've done and tried to give the benefit of the doubt to Logan Sargent, James Vowles is looking pretty smart right now, you got to say. And it looks like the fact that I think I saw Logan Sargent at the IndyCar race. My bet is that's where he's going to end up in that paddock next year, and that might just suit him a lot better. So I'm not going to take pot shots at Logan Sargent because I don't think it's right to do that, but Franco Colapinto, way to go, man. Come in, do the job. I get a tip of my cap right there. And Ollie Behrman too. You thought maybe if there was any thought that the Ferrari drive in Saudi Arabia was a fluke, no. That's not the case. He can clearly wheel himself around a car, and it's 2 different types of cars, one with a lot less probably overall grip than the other, and he didn't put a foot wrong at all this weekend. So Oliver Behrman looking very, very strong, particularly through qualifying at this stage of the weekend. All right, so we will now drop the green flag, and we will hop into the race itself. We shall start, as we are always apt to do, with the back markers. And we're going to have to talk about some of these back markers because you had the results don't tell the story. So your non-classified finishers were Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll. Maybe that's not surprising. The next 2 definitely are Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez. So your first classified finisher finishing 1 lap down in P16, Valtteri Bottas in the Kick Sauber, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, Zhao Guanyu in the other Kick Sauber, Daniel Ricciardo in the V-Carb. With all due respect to Valtteri, Esteban, Zhao, and Daniel, and Yuki and Lance, I think we got to talk about Carlos Sainz and we got to talk about Sergio Perez, who are both having very, very strong races until the very, very end. Hate to put in the spoilers here, but this is where we ran into them. Cody, tell us about what you saw and what your thoughts were on the Sainz-Perez incident, as it is now known.
All right. So from early on, or pretty much from the start of the race, Sergio Perez was still looking very strong. made it up to P3 at the start of the race and was pretty much hanging on to that spot through the running order, through the pit stops for most of the race. Now, we're going to get to the whole battle between Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri here in a few minutes, but those two were running 1-2 for the whole time and were really duking it out heading into the end of the race. And every time that they started getting into closer fights, they would take time off of each other, and Perez would just kind of sneak back into the picture. And there were many times where Perez was right on the back of them and looked like if things went the right way, he could be on for the win. Now, he could have actually been on for the win with a lot better chances had McLaren not given some orders to Lando Norris to back him up a little bit during the pit stop sequence to make it so that Piastri could still get out in front of Perez. So that was a little bit of I guess smart thinking on McLaren's part to work that out, because he did slow him down pretty much just enough for Piastri to get back out in front of him.
Would you call that inverse papaya rules?
Yeah, I guess in a way, yeah. You're working to help your teammate. Yeah, in a weird way, I suppose it would be.
One over papaya rules equals what Lando did there.
And Perez is definitely no stranger to taking those types of actions. You just got to look back to Abu Dhabi 2021 to see the masterclass in holding up another driver from Checo.
I literally yelled at my television. I said, "Way to go, Pot, for calling the kettle black."
Yeah, he was so pissed off about getting held up, and it's like,
where have we seen this before?
But I digress. You get to the end of the race, and he looks like he's on for a podium at the very least, and it's definitely something he needed. But throughout all this battle, too, you've got Carlos Sainz sneaking up into the picture. And then at the very, very end, after a long time of battling, we'll get to that, Charles Leclerc, finally the tires give up, and he's starting to lose ground. And now you've got, 3-car race effectively for second between Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz. And going into, I think it was the second to last lap, Perez makes a move going down the main straight on Charles Leclerc, and Leclerc is now on the defense, and he really, really pushes it there. Holds off as late as he can on the brakes at the end of that straight, puts the car in just the right spot to make it so that Perez is going to have a really hard time completing that pass, and it ends up leaving Checo out to dry a little bit. And now Carlos Sainz sees the opportunity, and he's trying to get by Perez. Now Perez fights back, or at least, is starting to fight back, and he's wanting to still try to get up to Leclerc for that second place spot. And what happens is coming out of one of the turns, you've got Carlos Sainz just a little bit in front of Checo, kind of like one of these, if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, at least from the camera shots, it looks like they just kind of had one of those racing incidents where they move together. Maybe Carlos, being in front, just doesn't quite see where Checo is, or expects that he's going to give him a little more space. I guess, to be fair, Perez was the one who could see more what was going on and had space to move over to the left, but he was also still trying to fight for that spot, trying to stay in the Charles Leclerc slipstream. And yeah, they pretty much just moved together, had a pretty big collision into the wall, both out on the spot. And you can see that they're both very upset, especially Checo, because, he was this close to getting a really good result, the first one in a while, and, probably would have given him a massive boost to his confidence. And that is very important in sports. And yeah, it just didn't work out, and it really hurt that it was so close to the end.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Checo, you should still get the boost in confidence because you were right there
Sure.
all freaking weekend. And barring the brilliance of Oscar Piastri, you're racing for a race win with 2 laps to go. So you were right there in contention. And when's the last time we said that about Sergio Perez in a race on Sunday and haven't yet mentioned Max Verstappen? So he was definitely there. And Carlos Sainz was also all of a sudden, hello, how you doing? I'm back into the picture, into this battle for the podium as well. And it was just an unfortunate, I mean, I agree with you. I see it as just a racing incident. It's how ultimately the stewards saw it at the end of the day. I think it is, if anything, it's a mutual fault thing. One, Carlos is trying to pin Sergio up against the wall, which is kind of what he was trying to do. But he was also trying to leave just enough room for Sergio either to back out or to make it hard. Sergio didn't want to give any room. And it just comes together. And yeah, just the way that it goes at a street track is, those are not soft walls. Those are going to be hard walls and those types of places. So if you touch them, they're going to destroy your front suspensions. And that's exactly what happened. And I think it was just 2 guys going for positions who haven't necessarily been at the front. We haven't talked about Carlos Sainz being in uber contention for a race win in a while. We have not talked about Sergio Perez being in it since the first 4 or 5 races of the season. So, I think it's 2 guys going for a gap. There was no room on either of them, and they both kind of took each other out is kind of the way I saw it. All right, so we will leave the back markers there. There really wasn't anything else special to talk about except the uber aggression of one Yuki Tsunoda, who got so aggressive, apparently thinking the first lap of the race was the last lap of the race, that he ended up with a Pirelli-sized hole in his side pod, and that took him out, and that was his day done. The other recipient of that contact was one Lance Stroll. I thought it was more Yuki than Lance in that case, as much as I love to hate on Lance Stroll. That was not his fault. It's the first lap. Yuki, what the heck are you doing? Racing everybody like your life is on the line. Maybe his Formula One life might be on the line here, but a little bit too much aggression, I think, from there, and he called it a day after only 14 laps. All right, so we will now move into the midfield. That saw P12, Pierre Gasly, P11, Nico Hulkenberg. Here come your rookies. P10, Oliver Behrman in the Haas, the lucky recipient of a point after the Perez-Sainz incident. P9, Lewis Hamilton, a bit of a recovery drive after starting from the pit lane. P8, Franco Colapinto, super rookie in his second race, scoring points for Williams. P7, Alex Albon. Haven't said this in a long time. That's Williams double points, baby. Look at that. P6, Fernando Alonso. Hello, how you doing? Everybody else's misfortune becomes his gain. He's right there. P5, Max Verstappen. Probably a little bit flattering, that result, given the problems in the setup changes that he did to his car. And P4, the mega recovery drive, just enough to get a little bit more points on his championship rival. It might not be a real battle yet, but it's not dead yet. Lando Norris in the McLaren. All right, Cody, big thoughts here in the midfield. Got lots of good stories here.
We do. First off, great recovery drive from Lando Norris. I wasn't really sure what they were doing on the strategy there for a while because they started him off on the hards and they just kind of kept leaving him out there for longer and longer and longer. And I thought maybe they were just hoping for a safety car. But it ends up working out. They pit him late. He goes on to the mediums and he makes a really, really good recovery drive. I did not think he was going to finish in front of Max. I thought this was a good opportunity, for Max to open up that gap in the championship a little bit. But no, Lando ended up by the end of the race getting by Max. So, hats off to Lando there for, taking a bad situation and making it work. After the collision between Perez and Sainz, he's up to 4th place. So just missing out on a podium. Very good recovery drive. Max had a rough day, to be fair. Like, he was not performing as well as Perez throughout qualifying, throughout the race. It just was not his weekend. He was complaining about low grip and said after the race that the car felt like it was on 3 wheels throughout a lot of the track. So yeah, whatever setup change they did to his car was not working. And he got kind of even screwed over a little bit more at the end because he had a pretty good gap back to Fernando Alonso, enough of a gap to pit him for the fastest lap point, which would have at least made it so it was only 2 points that he was losing to Lando. But he pits, he gets the tires, and this virtual safety car comes out because of the accident. So he didn't even get to go for the fastest lap. So yeah, he just a little bit of bad luck on him there. But I hope for his sake that they are actually figuring out the car. That's what they've been saying, is that they feel like the performance has gotten better, that they know what's wrong. They did try a little bit of a different floor this time out. The big upgrade, I guess, is coming in Austin, as you said, but they were trying something a little different here. And at least in practice, it looked like they were going to be back in it. But yeah, bad race pace for Max.
Yeah, I think you probably got to put it down to track evolution. Probably did something. They thought the track was going to go one way and ended up going another. Whether that was it broke a little warmer than they all expected, or it was windy or less windy. But for whatever reason, Max Verstappen's car, especially in the castle section where it is so tight and so twisty, was not just turning for him. And there's so much right and left, and the tires were doing nothing but sliding across the track. So you're opening up the rubber literally as you're just trying to drive around. So very, very frustrating day for Max Verstappen, but it did. I'm a big proponent of watching body language in those interviews. Sometimes even what they say is not as important as how they look as they're saying it. He looked a lot calmer. You didn't hear the totally frustrated. You did hear a couple frustrated radio messages, and that's almost to be expected. But I didn't hear the super frustrated radio messages like I heard in Italy, where it didn't seem to matter what they were doing. They could not figure anything out. So I think they are still going to be in this fight. Do not write these guys off. They have been in the lead in the constructors forever. They've been in the lead in the drivers for going on. This was 3 years. There's a reason they got there. They haven't forgot how to do this. Adrian Newey notwithstanding, I think there's still a lot of talent in that team. So do not write these guys off by any stretch. But it was a frustrating day for Max. In terms of the guy I follow Lando all the way from the back to the front, no matter where he starts. He had himself a very interesting day. And you mentioned the interesting strategy to put him out on the hard tire. And a couple years ago, they had tried something similar to this. And it annoyed the hell out of me that they got off of that strategy, basically almost pitting only a couple laps after all the medium tires. And I remember even saying it at the time. I'm like, if you're going to go to the hard tire, you have to leave them out there. You have to get them through the graining. I saw Lance Stroll do this a few years ago, and Lance Stroll ended up being, I remember watching it and I'm going, that dude still hasn't pitted and they can't get around his ass. And I'm like, what the hell? He's on so much old tires. But they actually committed to the strategy, and kudos, they actually pitted him when I thought they should have. I'm like, you should pit him around lap 37, 38, put him on a softer tire, not necessarily a soft tire, even though he had them because of his Q1, but put him on a new, softer-ish tire and let him go and see what he can do. He comes out, he's like 13 seconds behind Max, and he pulled that second and a half that you needed to do every lap. And it's also helpful that it's a longer lap, unlike in Monza, that, you blink and that lap is done. Here it's 1:40 something. So you have time and you have sectors and ways to pull back time. And he did it. He got around Max. Nice clean racing from both of those guys. So, kudos on the recovery drive for Lando. I thought it was a very, very solid, good recovery drive. Probably, given where he was on Saturday, that's the best I could have hoped for, especially as a fan. Got to give shout-outs to the two Williams guys here, Franco Colapinto and Alex Albon. Double points for Williams. That's huge for that team. Absolutely outstanding by both of them. And Fernando Alonso, still showing that he's old is still good. Can still get some points out of it. That's good for Aston Martin. I think you're just seeing the beginning of some better times for that team, especially given who they have just signed and debuted. But the other super sub, Oliver Behrman in the Haas, that is an incredibly tough thing to do, to come in on a team. He knows nobody on that team other than maybe Io Kodamatsu, who helped negotiate his contract. That's probably about it. He comes in cold, literally almost changing out of his F2 uniform and going in. At least he had more notice this time than he did when he was in Saudi Arabia. But that's not a Ferrari that he's driving. But he still showed very well. And I think Haas have made a very good choice. They're getting the most out of what they can, and that's what Haas's job is, if that's how Gene's going to operate that team. And I think it's good things coming for Haas with Oliver Behrman behind one of the wheels of its car. So that was very, very encouraging. I thought the kid drove very well, didn't put a foot wrong all weekend as well. All right. Guess we do have to talk a little bit about Lewis Hamilton. He did have a bit of a recovery drive, only up to P9, but he was not a happy camper, man. And I don't know if that's just whenever Lewis says anything that the producers just key on it. But, he didn't seem too happy either.
Yeah, he definitely had some negative things to say during the race about that car, complaining to his race engineer at some points, being like, "Do you see how I have to drive this thing?" And I love the comeback on that one, like, "Well, yeah, we see it, but it's pretty effective." So he was not happy with the performance of that car, and really got kind of spared some blushes by Perez and Sainz retiring, because had they not, he would have actually finished outside of the points. Which would have not looked good, considering, George would have been all the way up in fifth. And I guess, we said a lot of it is that he took some new setup, added an engine to the pool, so he was starting at the back anyway. But, that Mercedes had been looking pretty good, up to the summer break, and now they're just kind of falling back again. I'm not really sure what's going on. It's like some weekends they look great. They're fighting for wins or getting them, and some weekends they're kind of languishing in the midfield and only making it on the podium because of a little bit of luck being on their side.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can think that's correlative that I can honestly say is it seems like cool and gray goes their way when the weather's that way, and then hot and sunny, they don't like that. They are not good when it is super warm out. That's what you had Italy. That's what you had again here. You're going to probably have that again. You're not going to have hot and sunny. You're going to have hot in Singapore. So I would not, given that, I'm not necessarily expecting them to be good. But after that, you get some tracks that are a little more there. Austin, probably going to be very hot in Austin, let's be honest. But Mexico, Brazil you can get some rain in Brazil. And then obviously you go to Abu Dhabi, you're going to get probably the more neutral conditions more than anything else. So where they have excelled, Canada, Belgium, Great Britain, those places where the weather has been on the cooler side, I think that favors their car, lets them talk a little bit better to their tires. I think they had the same kind of issue that McLaren had last year, where the McLaren car would fire up its tires really fast, and then they'd burn them out. And that's why they would start out really good in a lot of those races, and they would kind of fade out. Even after the first set of updates hit that car was fast, but they couldn't finish the jobs. You look at, what they did in Qatar. You look at what they did, in Austin, where Lando led for 30 some laps and then faded out kind of late. Same type of deal. I think they've got kind of that same issue, but that means that they're evolving. I mean, I still think their aero is definitely up from where it was, but I would say for the last couple of races, it's probably been more neutral than anything. All right, so we will move into the podium, and with the Perez-Sainz incident. Hi, my name is George Russell, and I just won third place. Kind of look in the cool-down room for sure. So he finishes P3. P2 and P1, that's where the meat of the battle was throughout the course of this race. We're going to have to dissect this thing. Charles Leclerc versus Oscar Piastri. Charles Leclerc comes home P2. Oscar Piastri, what a drive, man. Comes home in P1. I did not think that he was going to be able to hold that off. I'm being fully honest. I thought even when he got to the lead and he couldn't break the DRS, I'm like, he's got to shake him. And every time I thought he was going to shake him, Leclerc would get that little bit closer. And it was so I guess let's talk about the first part of the race, and let's talk about the setup to the pass for the lead. Because the race starts, everybody pretty much holds position, at least in the top two. Leclerc holds on to P1, but Piastri settles into P2. First stint, Piastri's holding pretty close for the first maybe 10 laps, and then his tires start to fall off, and he drops back about 4.5 seconds. And it looked like, that was probably all she wrote. Thanks, Oscar, for showing up. This is Leclerc's moment, this is his track. This is where he has the pole 4 times in a row. He's just going to go off into the distance, and that's all it was. We get our first set of pit stops. Everybody now goes on to the hard tire, and maybe it was a combination of the hard tire a little bit better on the McLaren than it was for the Ferraris, but Piastri finds himself getting closer again as he's firing up those hard tires. We get, I believe it's lap 20 or 21. He's about 0.3 behind at the line, because that's what I saw on the timing. And to watch this on timing, I thought something completely different had happened. All of a sudden, the timing just kicks him up from 0.3 back. Normally, when you're watching something on the timing, there's a moment where you can see they're side to side. It usually goes to like 1/10 or 0.001 or something like. There's always a 1 in there. I never saw the 1. So when I saw it on timing, and I'm like, Piastri now elevated to P1, what I thought happened, given their positions, was I thought Leclerc somehow spun off or went down the escape road a little bit or had to back out of it into turn 1. Well, that's not what happened at all. This was a dive bomb move from Oscar Piastri, but he did it in such a way that Leclerc said in the post-race he saw it coming and said, I'm going to let him go, try to crisscross dive bomb him and try to get him back into turn 3. That was Leclerc's plan. So he doesn't defend the move into the corner, but Piastri has enough grip to make it stick in the moment. He gets around him going in there, and Leclerc cannot make the counter move back going into turn 3. So that puts Oscar into the precious, precious clean air. It was just a great move. I don't really know how else to say it. It was the best move I've ever seen Oscar make in a car. But Cody, what's your thought on at least the pass for the lead?
Pass for the lead was awesome. And he, even after completing the pass, like you said, Leclerc was going to try to do the crisscross and take the spot back from him. But he put on some really good defensive moves there. I wouldn't go so far to say he was weaving. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but he was, pretty much positioning his car in just the right places where he moved to the inside for the defense and then moved back to the racing line for the turn. He was doing really good defense to hold the position through that series of turns. And I don't really know what happened with Leclerc and going to those tires, but that gap closed up really quickly after the first round of pit stops, because like you said, the gap was up to, I think it was even up over 5 seconds at one point. And yeah, after the pit stop sequence, Piastri closed up on him real quick. And then after the pass was completed, they were on pretty similar performance for almost the rest of the race. I would say that if Piastri hadn't gotten around Leclerc when he did, I think Leclerc would have won the race, because I think he would have gotten the tires fired up. I think he had probably, all things considered, probably had a little bit of better pace out of his car than Piastri did. Once the tires were good, but yeah, we ended up getting a really good show because Piastri was in front and he could not shake Leclerc. It seemed like lap after lap after lap. Leclerc would be right there, kind of at the right spot, heading into the super long straight. He'd get the DRS. He would try to get in for the move, and he just couldn't quite get far enough up there to get to the inside of Piastri to force him to do something. Piastri was always pretty much able to hold that spot, stay on the inside, hold off Leclerc, and they'd go around, and Leclerc would be just a little bit closer, and you'd think, okay, surely it's got to be this time, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah, for all the talk of DRS assisted passes and we don't need DRS in our lives, that may be true. That we may not need DRS really in our lives. I don't know. But I have never seen in the DRS era, especially there, anybody be able to take that many laps, both sides of this. One, look, Piastri for defending that many DRS attempts on a straight as long as that is, when it's normally the effect is so powerful that you can write it off and there's nothing you could do. Even if you try to break the toe, then they call you for a double move and they give you a penalty for that anyway. So it's almost usually fait accompli. Once you're in DRS, that's done. That was not the case. That was brilliant by Piastri, either in how he was deploying on the straight or how he was setting up to get just far enough into the straight where he had just enough of a gap in order not to make it so that Leclerc could actually get a move together on him. Leclerc, I know there were a couple of times where it got to within that magic 1/10 on the timing, and it was the time where I think Oscar forced him to go, like, if you're going to make this move, you're going to take me on the outside. Not able to do it. The other part of it that was fascinating was the difference in pace between these two cars. Dramatically different designs in the castle section and going on to that final straight, because it was so interesting to watch, because there'd be this mini sector where Leclerc would get closer, and then there'd be another mini sector where Piastri would squirt the throttle just a little bit coming in and out of the castle section and pull out that little bit of a gap. The consensus seemed to be like if you were within half a second going onto the straight, you were probably going to get past. And the closest Leclerc made throughout this entire battle was 0.6 of a second. So it was just on there. There were a couple times where I'm like, oh man, this has been fun, Oscar, but I think it's probably now going to happen. And it never did. And with about 4 laps to go, the other thing, and this is full credit to Leclerc, that dude knows how to make those Pirellis last, because the other axiom that you always know, if you're in that dirty air and you're in DRS, you really only get, for some drivers, 3 or 4 shots at it before you have to back off, cool the tires down, then try to get back into that zone again and try it. Leclerc didn't even try that. He just kept coming. And those tires kept humming for him until about 3 or 4 laps to go, when that was the cliff. That's what we never saw happen in Monza. That was the cliff. The tires just, all 4 of them, it looked like, gave out at the same time. So as good as Leclerc was at tire whispering, and I give him a lot of credit, because I have never seen in the Pirelli era or in the DRS era both of those things happen, where one, you can defend like that, and 2, you can attack like that, and the tires are still there. So
yeah,
what a battle.
Yeah, he only dropped back briefly, like for like a couple laps at one point in the middle of this battle. He dropped back just a little bit, probably to cool things off, and then it was right back on the attack. And like you're saying, he lap after lap after lap, he's doing this. You always hear about, you're going to overheat the brakes, you're going to overheat the tires, and up until those last few laps, he was making it work, and then it fell off a cliff. It was like suddenly there's nothing left, and he's losing too much time and falls out of DRS. And at that point, Piastri's just gotta make it home. But it was pretty funny to see just how stark the drop off was.
Yeah, and then it dropped Leclerc right into you thought the waiting clutches of Perez and Sainz, and then Perez and Sainz take each other out on the last lap. So Leclerc effectively really gets a get out of jail free card. That incident changed a lot. When we're going to look at the points in a little bit, that incident changes a ton of fortunes just for those 2 drivers not being where they were. But anyway, just to wrap it up, I think like I said before, this is one of Oscar's by far the best drive I've ever seen. This is why he was so sought after. And what a career move going away from Alpine when he did and going into a McLaren situation that did not look like this. They were just as far in the back as the Alpine guys were when he made that decision. So, and props to whatever Zach Brown said and whatever concession he gave. We've got 2 number 1 drivers. Yeah, it's a problem to have, but it's a great headache to have. So I'm just going to ride this wave and let's see where it takes us. But anywho, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to re-rack. We're going to then recap what this did to the points. Something has happened in the points that has not happened since Spain of 2022. We will talk about all of that in a little bit. Then we're going to open it up to your takes on this race. The fan email segment, we've got some bangers in here for a banger race. Thank you to everybody who contributed as well. We'll talk a little bit about some post-race controversy that happened via some social media posts and what the FIA is or isn't doing about it. And then we'll hand out some awards and we'll talk predictions. Here's the good news. We both scored points, but we'll leave it there. So it's a lot better for the 2 of us, but we'll talk about how we all did in predictions and then set it up for the F1 night race, Singapore. Will it go to time or do we get it in all the way? That's always the question, but come on back. We'll get into all that just a little bit. Welcome back in. This is season 6, episode number 35 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix review show. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up one hell of an Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Congrats to Oscar Piastri on the win there. All right, so what did all of this do to the drivers and the constructors standings? Cody, if you take the drivers, I will chime in with the constructors.
All right. So Mr. Sappin still holding on to that drivers' championship lead with 313 points. However, even though he didn't expect it, that gap to Lando Norris did shrink just a little bit. So Lando Norris in second place from McLaren at 254 points now. And then really not that far behind him is Charles Leclerc in third place, Ferrari with 235 points. And then at this point, really not far behind him, who's kind of bunching up here, is Oscar Piastri, getting the nice big 25 points here. He is at 222 points. So only 13 points behind Leclerc, who is only 19 points behind Lando. So things are kind of closing up after this race. A little bit of a gap down to Carlos Sainz in fifth place. For Ferrari, he's at 184. Unfortunately, did not get any points out of this race, even though he was on for a good finish. Lewis Hamilton in sixth place in the first Mercedes at 166 points. And then George Russell right behind him in seventh in the other Mercedes with 143 points. Now, George Russell is actually tied for points with Sergio Perez right now at 143 points. However, George gets the tiebreaker because he has a race win. So that is George in seventh and Perez in eighth. And then wrapping up the top 10 is going to be the two Aston Martins. So you have Fernando Alonso in ninth place with 58 points and Lance Stroll holding on to 10th with 24 points.
Yeah, the drivers is definitely going to get more interesting, if not the battle for P1 and P2, which is Lando chipping away ever so slightly. But the battle for P2, man, and that might be just what saves Max's bacon, is there's four guys really with a crack at this thing now. Between Lando, Leclerc, who you have to say is on outstanding form. This is some of the best form he's shown. Oscar Piastri's on some unbelievable form in the past, a P1 and a P2, respectively, in his last two outings. That's pretty good. And Carlos Sainz, hard luck guy, man. You feel for him right there. The one guy we didn't talk about was George Russell on the podium, and that's because he had a very boring race. He just, literally, hi, I'm on the podium type of situation. the big benefactor of the Sainz Perez incident. But now he is technically in front of Sergio Perez, who that 8th place, while normally I would say he would deserve to be there, not the case this weekend. I thought he deserved better. If he can somehow salvage something at the end of this season, that is huge for him. Will take some pressure off. His next 2 races are going to be very critical between Singapore, Austin, where he's going to have a lot of support, and then Mexico, where he's going to have a lot of support. So it could still swing back that way.
Before, I think, right?
Yeah,
So he's got a race win there. So he's got a chance next time out of hopefully having a repeat performance.
Yeah, the question is going to be, have Red Bull solved Singapore? Because that was not the case last year. We don't know what we're going to get this year. And they don't have the time to bring the update package that they're confident in to this race. So we're going to see. It's going to be fascinating to watch. But anywho, in that Constructors, we have a new leader in the front, a 10-year journey. I can't believe it's been this way since Australia. 2014 was the last time McLaren led the Constructors' Championship, and that was one weekend for one time, and that was only after Daniel Ricciardo got disqualified from his race win at the Australian Grand Prix. It was Kevin Magnussen and Jenson Button with a respective P2 and P3 there. But McLaren Mercedes are now in front of the 2024 Constructors' Championship. They check in with 476 points. P2 is now Red Bull Racing Powertrains, They check in with 456. P3 is Ferrari. Don't look now. They're not going away. They're up to 425 points. Bit of a gap now to P4 Mercedes. They are solidly locked in there. That is where they will finish with 309 points for them. P5, Aston Martin. They look to be pretty much locked into that position as well. More than likely will finish in P5 at the end of this season. I can make that call now. They check in with 82 points. P6 is the VCARB team. They check in with 34. The rest of this, nobody's going to be set in these positions because P7 is Haas with 29. That's only a 5-point difference. Every point matters. Oliver Behrman, big point for Haas this weekend. P8, Williams, double points. Somebody other than Alex Albon scored a point in Williams. Hot damn. They are up to 16 points. P9 is Alpine. Somebody make the pain stop for those guys after this weekend. Wow. But they're not bad. They're not that far out of P8. 13 points there. And P10, this is the other guys. Make the pain stop. Somebody make the pain stop for Valtteri Bottas and Zhao Guanyu. Because Kick Sauber Ferrari still check in with 0 points. All right. So you have heard our takes on the Azerbaijani Grand Prix weekend, or the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend. It is now time to open it up to your takes on what you thought about this weekend. It's the fan email segment. We've got our normal contributors here. Cody, I think they're all pretty good ones. Cody, what you got?
All right, our first fan email comes in from Dave Doherty. Thank you, Dave. And he says, "Hi, team. Well, that was a good race day and a few surprises that got chucked in. I felt bad for Lando in the quali and seeing my man Lewis starting in the pit lane, but I thought Oscar was the driver of the day. What were your thoughts on McLaren for this weekend? Williams had a weekend that was like gold dust. And did Sainz take out Perez for McLaren's lead? Not really sure what you mean.
I don't think that Sainz was going into his old team and saying, I'm going to do this to give you guys the lead. I think Carlos Sainz was going for a gap. I think Sergio Perez was going for a gap. There was only room for one car, and that unfortunately happened.
I mean, Perez drove for McLaren too. Maybe Perez was taking out Sainz for McLaren lead. I don't know. But
Perez was only there for a year, and then they axed him.
Yeah, that is true. Something tells me, though, it was probably nothing to do with that. Just two guys going for what they thought was, well, I mean, it wasn't what they thought was. They were going for the podium. They were fighting for that, and neither one of them wanted to give an inch and ran out of space, unfortunately.
Yep.
Definitely agree. Oscar was driver of the day. We talked about the lengths he had to go to hold on to that win. McLaren obviously had a great day. Oscar had the race win, one of the best drives of his career through any level of Formula racing. And Lando Norris managed to take a bad situation in qualifying and still managed to make it around Max and close up that championship lead just a few points. So, yeah, overall, I think the best that they could have hoped for after qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, to come out of there with a P1 and a P4, I know I was texting you after you watched qualifying, and I love the meme you sent to me, by the way. It was not funny at the time, but I laughed anyway. And I think I told you I thought Lando would finish sixth. And damn if I actually wasn't dead on, but for the Perez Sainz incident where he was going to finish sixth and then gets promoted up to P4. So that's found money. I mean, that literally in the constructors is found money. And sometimes you need a little bit of luck if you're going to be a constructors champ when you don't have the P1 and the drivers. And, you know, maybe that's just kind of the bit of luck that they're going to need to actually close the deal on this show. But, yeah, I mean, I was very confused watching the Q1 session, especially when I saw the timing all of a sudden it go, because I'm like, usually once you make it to the third sector, I kind of relax because, well, that's just them fully out, wide open on the straight. You can't screw that up. And I'm like, wait a minute, how's he screwing that up? And then, you know, you find out exactly what happened. And then I was just, it kind of took the steam out of my sails at the moment. But I said, let's see an overtaking display. And I think I was even talking with the Formula on Twitter about it. I said, the best thing that Oscar can do is get out to the lead and go for a win. And that's, damn it, if that's not what they did. So if you're going to get on them for all of the papaya rules stuff, and you're going to get on them for some of the strategy mistakes and some other races, and I've gotten on them too, got to give it to them when they get it right. They got it right this weekend.
Yep, I agree for sure. Thank you again, Dave. Our next email comes in from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, what a race, blimey. It's a little strange to say that. That is what we wanted. Wrong country.
Yeah, I know.
That is what we wanted. Okay, I didn't want Perez and Sainz to crash, but drivers fighting for the win. Great result for Piastri and McLaren to get revenge for Monza. Russell must be thinking, if I just stay out of trouble, I can take advantage of others messing up. And I would agree with you because that has netted him a podium and a win so far this year. Colapinto and Behrman points, brilliant results from two young drivers. Haas will be over the moon with such a result. The future is bright there. Then she goes on to say, McLaren have the lead of the constructors. It has been coming, and I did think this would be the race. But it was Perez until the last lap who kept us guessing instead of Max. Not a great result there. I wonder if Christian Horner has an Adrian Newey dartboard. Maybe just maybe.
Too soon. He's right down the hall still.
Finally, why do we all have to hear Lewis Hamilton winging on the radio? We never get to hear Joe or Bottas's radios. It seems a little unfair. I did say at one point, just shut up, Lewis. And I would like to add what I imagine Adrian Newey's first day might be like. Right, what can we do for you, Adrian? Fire Lance. I think while you could put many better drivers into that seat, Daddy owns the team. I don't think Lance is going anywhere as long as he wants to keep racing. It seems like at this point that the Aston Martin racing team is pretty much Lawrence Stroll's project to win F1 for Lance. He's giving him everything he can. Only problem is he's got to go up against, Fernando Alonso if they get a championship winning car. And it seems like even if Alonso is, in his 50s, he's still going to be able to pull it off at the rate he's going. Yeah. So we'll just have to see what happens once, Adrian Newey has had a significant amount of input in a car, which will probably be for the 2026 car. I don't mind hearing Lewis complain on the radio. He was even doing that when he was winning the championships.
That's true.
So it seems like it's just a tradition at this point. It's just, it's part of what you got to do. And I think Joe and Bottas know what to expect out of their car at this point, so they're probably not even doing that much complaining.
Yeah, I mean, if the thing with the team radios on the main broadcast has always been what's the most dramatic. Sometimes I actually do think they take some editing license when I've listened to onboards in the radio. They do number one, they clean it up and to make it more audible, and two, sometimes they do affect the timing. It sounds so much more conversational on the race broadcast, but then when you actually listen to it on the onboards, it's like the question might be asked and the guy's waiting till the straight or something to finally answer him. And then he's thought about it for so long that, maybe he's a little upset that, he still hadn't answered him or still, whatever it is. So there's dramatic license being taken out with that. I would say if that is something that is a major source of frustration, my recommendation would be find a way to get the onboards if you can. If you're in the UK, Sky does have a pretty good app that does now have all the onboards. They keep promoting it all the time when I watch Sky that way. Or F1 TV is the other alternative for you if you can. I know you probably have to VPN it to get it out of there with you being in the UK. But if you can get on the Sky, it's probably worth it to hear some of the raw stuff, because I think it adds an extra dimension and it will give a lot of what you think is this exasperated radio some context there. But, to your point about Colapinto and Behrman, that couldn't agree more. And George Russell's just hi, my name is George, and I'll be your third place driver today. Just kind of showing up. That's just what he did. And he got it. Cody, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's how he got the Austria win. That's how, and now he's got a podium out of it. And, if not for the DQ, he'd be right in the mix, for P4, P5 in the drivers as well. So, it's all setting up for next year to be, who knows what the hell's going to happen next year.
I look forward to it very much. I think next year is going to be awesome because you're going to have, hopefully, continuation of this year where everyone is very, very close and competitive, but you're going to get it from the very start. So we're not going to have that, hopefully, that, first 5 races where you think Red Bull's just going to romp off with it again, and it'll be close from the get-go. At least that's what I am hoping for.
Well, that's the hope. I hope the F1 gods don't do that thing where it all looks like it's going to be like that, and then somebody gets some innovation, and Ferrari are winning the constructors by 100 points or something like that.
That's 2026. We're gonna have it perfect next year, just in time for them to change all the regulations and have one person run away with it, or one team.
Well, it might be a green car at that point, but we'll see.
Never know. I don't think Christian Horner has an Adrian Newey dartboard yet, because they still have an Adrian Newey, at least probably in the same building still. Don't throw darts at him, please, though. Anyway, thank you, Rachel, for your email. Our last one comes in from The Formula. Thank you, The Formula, Mr. Formula, something like that. And they said, that was quite the ending. Oscar is not going to make this easy for McLaren, nor should he. Regardless, I love where McLaren is at. You never know when these days might end, so let's appreciate it. That might be a little too much of a scary forecast.
That's a Vettel drop right there.
Yes, it is. And,
yes, it is.
Those days did not last very much longer after he said that. So hopefully you're not casting rain clouds over that one. Regarding the Sainz Checo incident, I really think that was completely avoidable. Yes, Sainz drifted slowly left, but Checo didn't react to that in the slightest. He had more than enough time to move another couple inches left and keep racing hard. Lastly, the DRS on the pit straight is what Marilyn Monroe was to JFK, a complete tease. It might need a bit more tweaking for next year. And then lastly, the formula says, let's discuss.
Oh, that was my note, but he sent me the Flexi Wings thing, and we'll talk about that here as well.
Okay.
I guess the DRS thing, I actually thought the fact that it was more of a tease made this race better. Had it been just an overtaking fest into turn one, even that eventually gets boring. That's like, those types of passes are like, they're like, chocolate bars. If you have too many of them, you get a stomach ache. By the end of it, it's too much. You want one to taste the sweetness of it, to enjoy it, savor it, and move on. The Piastri pass going into turn one with DRS assistance, that's your moment. That's what that DRS was. Now, it was probably not what they were anticipating. Yeah, they moved it back, I think 100 meters or something like that. It just looks like everyone is so close on relative overall top-end pace that the DRSs are kind of canceling each other out. You did find a lot of trains. I thought you had kind of a bit of a Singapore situation actually happening in that battle between Piastri and Leclerc, where Piastri would, it would yo-yo back and forth. I don't think he was trying to do it on purpose, like Sainz was doing to Lando in Singapore last year, but it felt like that. It felt like no matter what, at some point, unless there was a mistake, that you weren't going to see the rubber band just spring forward. And maybe if you are a fan of DRS, that is not what it is entitled to do. It's designed to get you past that dirty air. And it seemed like we had a lot of people complaining about the dirty air.
Yeah. I enjoyed that it wasn't, a situation of push button, get past.
Right.
I liked that there was, ability to defend from the DRS, which we see at so many races. You push that DRS, especially last year with, the Red Bull rocket. We used to joke about all the time that you got into the DRS zone and the Red Bull would just take off down the road. It was nice to see you be able to fight back against that, at least.
And the other thing you have, you do have a little bit more driver control of the deployment, where when they first went from the KERS to the ERS, that was completely computer controlled. The computer would take over. The driver really didn't have any input of it. Now that more of that is on the driver, you're seeing, especially in some of the straights, and I would go back to Zandvoort, where Leclerc was doing an amazing job of deploying against Piastri on the main straight. Even though Piastri would get into DRS, and you're thinking, well, okay, this should be it. He just couldn't get there. It was the same type of thing here, where whatever Piastri figured out, if I deploy and drain that battery right here, he can't get there. So that's a calculation in real time that's happening that nobody's even talking to anybody about. But those things are happening, and that's not coming from the engineers, because I heard all the onboards of Oscar. They didn't mention any of that. So that was on Oscar. That's part of the race craft. And that's what, when they put it back more in the driver's hands, what this was supposed to be.
I agree.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit of some post-race stuff that I did happen to see on social media that the Formula did send me the onboard. And obviously when you're leading the race and you have somebody behind you, you're going to get the onboard of the shot facing your rear wing. And it is clear to me that the McLaren wing, when it gets loaded up, does do the little bendy thing. And it's even so much, I've heard it dubbed by a motorsport.com article as mini DRS, as it's being dubbed. And I actually, yeah, really, I mean, and the question that the Formula asked me was, hey, is this thing legal? And a lot of the Ferrari fandom was citing, all of a sudden I'm getting my rules handed back to me and I'm reading them and I'm going, well, here's this thing with the flexi wings in general, and here's the stance the FIA has taken on all this. The FIA has said it's got to pass what they don't have. They don't have a good system for measuring that and to say, well, at this point, if it flexes so much, it's out of bounds versus if it flexes this much, it's in bounds. There's a dot system that they have with certain cameras that the FIA put in that are not part of the onboard package, because the onboard package is at the discretion of a director at FOM to when it goes forward, when it goes back, all that stuff. So it's not a consistent shot. So because of that, they have this dot system, and they have certain FIA mandated cameras that are on all the cars that do watch for these things. The only other test they have is the load test. And according to the FIA, they've come out and said, at least for the front wing part of this, for sure, that they said, well, until the technology becomes available for us to measure this and what it does more, if it passes the load test, it's in effect legal. And that's really what they're kind of saying in this motorsport.com article that came out this morning about this. And the quote is, the more interesting battle is yet to come, though, as the rest of the teams will now undoubtedly look at how they can either incorporate a similar design methodology, albeit it is likely that McLaren has taken full advantage of it already this season, given we've already visited a large proportion of the high-speed events on the calendar. So they definitely had this in Monza. It looks like they had it here. It's definitely helped with their straight line package, because that used to always be one of their Achilles heels, was they do really well in the slow corner, in the corner and the twisty bits, but they couldn't get the straights. And their straight line speed is still not great, but doesn't seem to matter. However,
go ahead.
I was going to say, however, that all being said, it looks like the net result of this is going to be it's legal for this year. And the other thing I didn't hear from anyone official was there was no talk of a protest. So it looks like this is going to be allowed, at least for the end of this year, and then we'll see if the FIA makes some sort of a statement about it.
I am sure that all the other teams will try to find a way to recreate this now that it seems that it's going to be legal for at least the rest of this season. I do kind of feel it goes a little against the spirit of the rules, and the FIA has made, or F1, whoever actually makes the rules, they do have language in the rules that say that they can disallow things that go against the spirit of the rules. And the whole thing about the DRS is it's supposed to be there to open under specific, track sectors to counter the time lost when you are following another car in dirty air. That's really what it's there for. So if your DRS flap is opening in places outside of those DRS zones, you're gaining an advantage that it's not really supposed to be for. And that's what the McLaren wing is doing based on this camera shot, is that the DRS flap is flexing on straights when it's not a DRS zone, but it's under enough load that that DRS gap opens just a little bit and is therefore giving the car a little less drag. And so I think, in my opinion, they are kind of taking what that DRS system is for and taking advantage of it being there and using it outside of what it was intended to be there for. So that's why I feel it goes a little bit against the spirit of the rules. But as you said, there apparently is not a good way of policing that type of flexibility at this time. If it's passing their existing load tests, it is okay. And maybe that means that they need to come up with better tests, which they might do for next season or going forward, or they might have some amendments to the rules that specifically make this illegal. But the whole thing with flexible bodywork is it's kind of a weird area, because you can't make the bodywork not flex at all, because it needs to be able to flex under those types of loads, or else it's just going to break. So there needs to be some amount of flexibility in there, and it's a really blurry line between what is flexibility for the sake of durability and what is going too far and actually giving you a performance advantage. So right. I think they're going to need to do some digging into how they want to handle that. If they want to maybe make it so that it's like you can't have the DRS flap opening at any point on the track other than DRS zones, and that they have cameras there to police that. I don't know. But for the moment, with it being more or less deemed legal, we're definitely going to see other teams trying to take advantage of that for the rest of the season where they can.
I don't know that you're going to see very much of it left of this season, because I don't know where else you would run that low of a wing. given the tracks that are still left on the calendar. You're certainly not going to see it in Singapore. You're going to see the exact opposite. You're going to see the full, you're going to see the full, they don't want it to open. They want the downforce. Give me more downforce, any downforce, please, type of thing in Singapore. And Austin is kind of a mix, but you want high downforce in that first sector. So you're definitely not going to see it there. Mexico, maybe. But I don't think anybody's going to want to do that because you're at altitude and you got thin air anyway, and you're going to see you're going to see Singapore wing at Mexico. That's usually what they do there. And then Brazil is a mixed bag. You're definitely not going to run low drag there. You definitely want some downforce. And then Abu Dhabi's kind of neutral. So I don't think you're going to see this happen. The fact is there hasn't been any official sources, and I went and did some digging because, I see the postings and, so all of a sudden certain people start commenting and the next thing you know, you got a trend going. There's been no inkling of any protests from any of the teams or anything like that. They either, one, don't know how to police it, which is probably what the real answer is, or two, they want to try to figure this out themselves and don't want the rule debate shut off before they can derive some benefit out of it. So you're probably going to see more if you can't beat it, join it type of situation going into next year with stable rules. Where else can you really develop? Well, that's an area where you can develop. You can look at what McLaren have done in a gray area. I also think, just as a McLaren fan, if that's the highest form of flattery is when people are looking at your car, because it means you have a reason to get your car looked at. So there you go. But, if it is outside the rules, then what you would see, let's say that they develop a way to test it. You would see probably some sort of a mid-year technical directive get issued that would specifically address that issue. And I've not seen any such thing, or like I said, I haven't seen anything official saying that anybody wants to protest or is going to. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for a fascinating fan email discussion as always. It's always great to hear from you guys and get your takes on what you saw over the course of this weekend. All right, we will move into our awards, and we shall start, as we are apt to do, with the Rubbish Award. I've got a couple candidates for mine. Cody, I like yours probably a little bit better. At least they're all on track. But I'll let you go first. What you got?
All right. So my Rubbish Award doesn't go to any particular single driver or team. I'm going to give the Rubbish Award to the accident that occurred between Perez and Sainz. The formula mentioned that they felt that the blame falls more on Perez, and I can see where you're coming from on that because he definitely had a lot of track to move over. However, as far as the contact itself goes, I don't think it was really anybody's fault. It was just such a minor contact that where it was on the car caused them to really collide into the wall. But what makes it rubbish was you have two drivers whose futures are, somewhat uncertain, I would say, much more uncertain in Perez's case. And he has been having a pretty bad run of form for a while. And Sainz, he's got a race win this year, but he hasn't had any super flashy results in a little while now. And yes, he is going to a Williams seat next year, but we have to be honest, it's probably not where he wants to be for the rest of his Formula One career. So he's probably trying to show everything that he can while he's still in that Ferrari. So you got two drivers that really needed a good result here, and they had it, taken away between the two of them on the second to last lap. That's really got to sting.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to swallow. I get why both are frustrated at the other. And probably I'd act the same way if I'm being fully honest, if I was in that situation. But my on-track one goes out to Alpine, and it would be nice if they actually looked like they wanted to be there this weekend, because I didn't get that sense at all. What was it? You had the Esteban Ocon get a puncture, and that screwed Lando's Q1. So that was number one. You had Pierre Gasly's engine die in one of the practices, and that killed any of the normal running. And it just looked like every time there was a yellow flag or a red flag, it was always the fault of an Alpine for something. And then Pierre Gasly tries to get it together for qualifying, and then they get DQ'd from qualifying. So, my gosh. For God's sakes, like if this is Flavio Briatore's influence, get better influence, man. Because I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And if their goal is to sell and to try to pull enough value in it so it sells, do better, man. Because that was painful to watch. And I know that there's lots of Alpine fans out there that were probably mega more frustrated with it than I ever would be. But that was painful. And I did not enjoy that. And my off track, I do not understand Sky's decision of who they staff for some of these races, because the jean wearing short shirt sleeved Jacques Villeneuve was back doing punditry for Sky F1, and it was so full of hot takes that I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to turn it off. I watched the F1 TV feed instead. So much better. If I want Hot Take City, I'll go to Twitter, and that's where I'll go for that, because that's what it's for. But I feel like you're not making anybody smarter as a fan, and I think that that's what you should be doing. So I don't want to see that guy. You've got so much better talent. Jenson Button is a great pundit. Anthony Davidson is a great pundit. Karun Shandak, I think, did the best to try to rescue a really tough weekend without David Croft there. But Harry Benjamin, I thought, did a great job on the PA on the play-by-play. But hot damn, no need for that guy. Get him away.
Man, I take a little bit of offense to the first part of that. I love my blue jeans and my short shirt sleeves.
Yeah, no, but that's fine. But you're not going on television in front of 1 billion people.
It's fair. I mean, even if I was, I'd probably still wear the blue jeans, to be frank. But
I don't even have a problem with the blue jeans. But wear a freaking polo shirt, man.
That is fair. Now, you know that he is a pretty divisive figure, it seems, in the Formula One punditry.
Oh, and that's why he's there. And yes, exactly. And that's why he's there. And you know what? It finally just got to the point where, you know what? I'll rant here, and then I'm done. And then I just did the thing that I should do. And that's what my recommendation would be if you find yourself with anybody who any of these places put out. Change the channel. There's other places to find it. We're here for you if you want it. So, anyway, I'm done. Until the off season, when there is nothing else going on, and the article comes out that says Jacques Villeneuve says somebody is going to do something great next year.
Oh my God, I've seen that so many times where Jacques Villeneuve says this about this team or this driver. It's like, I don't care. You haven't driven in years. Like,
right. I don't know who actually looks forward and goes, gosh, let's hear what this guy has to say. Anyway, we will move on. I'm done. Analysis paralysis. I actually think we have some consensus here. This is interesting. Cody, what you got here?
I am sad to say that my analysis paralysis award's going to go to Max Verstappen, and whatever they did to his car leading into qualifying and therefore the race, because he looked like he was doing all right in practice, looked like he was on for a pretty good weekend. Would have been a really good time to have a really good weekend, because it wasn't going to be Lando's best weekend. And yeah, somehow they took those changes they made to the car, they made it work for Perez, and they didn't make it work for Max, and Max is really the one they needed to work for right now. So I think that was more on Red Bull than Max this time out, and I hope they can figure it out for Singapore, because that's another bumpy track, another track where, you know, even more so than Azerbaijan here, probably where you want to maximize your grip, as you were saying before. So they need to figure out what went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, who knew that at the beginning of the season I would ever have Red Bull here? I did not think I was going to see that. But yet again, the season keeps giving, so here we are. Red Bull get an analysis paralysis award from me for that exact same setup change that apparently doomed whatever Max had going for him, because they looked significantly better in FP1 and FP2. And I thought after the Friday running, I went, all right, they're good. This is the fight back. This is what I would have expected. It's now come. They're figuring their stuff out. And then it's the same results as it was in Monza. So different feeling, same result. Hello, kitty. But yeah, can't believe I'm putting Red Bull here, but that they get the award for this weekend. All right, so we will move into our dark horse of the day. I'll go first here, and Oliver Behrman is a close second on this one, but this one has to go out to Franco Colapinto, who literally got pried off the bench 2 weeks ago and said, "Here's the Williams car that Logan crashes all the time. But here you go drive that." And he did. And he comes home in the points, double points for Williams. That whole Williams Academy gets a solid point in the right direction with something that we didn't think was ever there. And, a lot of people said, wow, did not see that guy's name coming. So James Fowles, for knowing something we didn't, you share in this one as well. Dark horse, Franco Colapinto, and Williams.
I agree. I'm going to actually give this award to both Franco Colapinto and Oliver Behrman. You have Ollie Behrman, who is now subbed in for 2 different teams so far this season. One of them on pretty short notice, and one of them in Haas, which, face it, is not the most competitive car on the grid. And he's managed to score points on both occasions, which is very impressive. Only 2 races in F1 this year, 2 different teams, points, gotta love it. And yeah, Franco Colapinto, only his second race out, he's out-qualifying Alex Albon and getting into the points. Even with Perez and Sainz not retiring, he still would have been in the points. He would have been in 10th, which was quite the achievement on his own. And now he's just even further up there in the points. So hats off to him, really showing that he has a lot of talent, when I don't really think before it happened that anyone was really, anyone outside of those in the know was really considering him seriously for the C. We were talking about all manner of different drivers, and he's really come into it and shown that he's got what it takes.
Yeah, interesting stat about Oliver Behrman. He's P16 in the drivers. There are 6 drivers below Oliver Behrman in the 2024 standings. So just go figure. Go figure. All right. So we will now move into driver of the day. And I think we are in full agreement here. This is Oscar Piastri. This was his coming out party. If he didn't have the oh, hell yeah moment after the Hungarian Grand Prix because of all the team order drama, he gets it here. This was a oh, hell yeah moment and then some. Guy should be proud of the drive he did. His team should be proud of the drive he did. I think everybody is. This was his coming out party. Hell of a drive, man. And I did not see that one coming.
Yeah, this was an easy award. It's definitely an Oscar Piastri. Very, very good drive. Had to really fight for that win. And I would say for him, it's probably not so much of an oh, hell yeah moment as a oh, that was nice moment, because even after all of the stress he had to be going through, defending from Leclerc for 20 plus laps, fighting for that win, he still sounded cool as a cucumber on the radio and in the interview, and looked cool as a cucumber up on the podium. I don't think anything knocks that guy around. You were telling me that he would make a good surgeon, because he's just,
oh my God,
nothing phases him.
Like, that's the guy who you want to go save your life. I want that guy, because it doesn't matter what's going on in the room. There could be things beeping all over the place. He's going to make the right decision, because he's just steady hand all the way around. And that's unique. Not everybody can do that. That is a unique talent, especially in a race car driver who, sometimes we see the high, the lows, steady. And that's going to serve him well as his career is just getting started. All right. So we will move into our predictions. And I teased this. We both scored points. I'm off the schneid. I got 4 points this weekend, which is 4 more than I had the last time out. So I actually did get the quali time. Hey, look at that. I got P2 on the podium and P3 on the podium, and I'm giving us both the prop bet because a virtual safety car is still a safety car. So it's good enough. So I get 4 points. But Cody, you have bested me one more week again. You got 5 points. Actually, it was interesting kind of calculating this. We did an interesting thing with the podium. I got P2 and P3. You got P1 and P2. So those actually canceled each other out. You got the pole sitter. You predicted Charles Leclerc. I probably, in retrospect, should have done that. But you got the fastest overall lap time. That's what actually does it for you. And you get the prop bet as well because you said, and like I said before, a virtual safety car is a safety car, so we both score there. So you win the weekend 5-4.
I was really thinking there, and it was almost there, that we were going to go through this one without a safety car again. I was starting to wonder, man, when the hell is this going to end? If it doesn't end here, surely it's going to end in Singapore, right? So
it's 100% chance in Singapore. Yeah. You know, in all the races they've had one every year. So at least for one lap. But speaking of Singapore, that is what is on tap. The F1 night race is upon us. They will all pack up and head over there. It will be weird timing for everybody, except it'll be more on European timing. So the sun will be setting there while it's rising for us, and we will be here for it. We shall do our preview later on this week, and then get all geared up for our back-to-back before another mini break, before the US GP and this season that keeps on giving. So stick with us. We'll be here all for it. The twists, the turns, the ups, the downs, all of the breaking news. We'll be all here for it. So for Cody, it's been Andy. This was a fun one, man. I enjoyed this one. We'll be back next time out. And as always, may all your laps be fast.